Ooh. Yeah. Buonasera. Hi everyone. You see? We will be speaking in English, but you can understand us with the translation in Italian. My name is Sarah, and I'm the social media manager for the European Commission's Department for International Cooperation and Development. Next to me, and I guess this is the reason why you are here tonight, I have Esther from Uganda and Guillem from Spain. Besides being excellent photographers, they are also the winners of our side-by-side project, which took them on a 2-week photography trip in Uganda to discover the impacts of the European Union Africa Trust Fund in the country. You must be wondering what is this program about, but basically, in a nutshell, this program was created in 2015 to address and tackle irregular migration, primarily in the Horn of Africa, North of Africa, the Sahel, and Lake Chad regions. Coming back to the side-by-side project, tonight we are here to share their experiences with the project, and if you didn't have yet the chance to have a look at the exhibition that thanks to them we have here in Rimini, I would really invite you to go there. After. So basically, I prepared a couple of questions which I will ask them. But if in the meantime you have questions, please raise your hand and we will address them straight away. So, for the two of you, the idea behind Side by Side was to give you the chance to show everyone through your lenses the impact of the EU Trust Fund in the beneficiaries of the project. And in fact, how it is actually changing their lives for the better. In order to do so, we gave you full freedom to find the right approach to this side-by-side project. Could you share with us what was the approach and how you got there?
Well, thank you for the questions. And well, having freedom was also a challenge. But as soon as we met in the European delegation in Uganda, and we start to talk about in which way we were going to approach the issue. We very fast realized that we wanted to show and to approach this issue in a different way. Not in the way that we always see pictures about refugee camps or refugee settlements. And well, being in that waiting room in the European delegation in Uganda, we first came up with the idea of targeting also the hosting communities and not only the refugees, because the European aid, the programs that Europe has in Uganda, it targets 50% the refugees and also 50% of the hosting communities. And this thing gave us the idea of that Esther is going to focus on the refugees, and I would focus on the hosting communities to have the voice of every person that is living nowadays in the north of Uganda and in the refugee settlements. And I think Esther is going to give us a little bit more of explanation, because Esther had a project, an ongoing project targeting the refugees.
Okay, thank you. So we were tasked to tell stories involving the refugee community and the host community, because so the EU, the way it's working, also through UNHCR, they are trying to get unequal services delivered to the communities that are hosting refugees as much as they're helping the refugees. So it was very important for us to work on both sides of the community, and so we decided to come up with this project more in a way of exploring who are these people, who are the refugees, how does one become a refugee, rather than focusing on the development part of the EU works. Yeah.
It was really taking us behind the scenes of our own projects, in fact. And this is a very interesting point, because Uganda, the approach is very interesting, because Uganda is the country, is the hosting country with the highest number of refugees in Africa. What was the impact of the people, of these people, the beneficiaries that you had the chance to have contact with, when you enter in their communities and pushed from your camera and started taking pictures of them?
What I personally came to realize through this project is so people are used to being photographed a lot, especially the refugees, because I was focusing on the refugees and he was focusing on the hosting communities. But the refugee crisis has been photographed a lot. In 2017, when Bidi became the world's largest refugee settlement, every journalist, every photographer was going there. And the mentality is that you come in, you tell the stories of what you see, but you don't get to actually involve the people in telling their own stories. So we were going on ground through different organizations that are funded by the European Union. And the questions that we were asking the people, they didn't expect. So you would be taken to a farmers group and they welcome you, and then you ask them, okay, what is the most important item you brought with you from South Sudan? And they'll be like, why are you asking me this? It felt like for once they've been given an opportunity to actually revisit themselves too. And sometimes people would be like, I don't know, what did I carry? I just ran. But of course you work through it and then they realize something very much importance to them. And they were very welcoming. Yeah.
Well, in my case, working with the hosting community was also very important. The local organization that work with fund of the European Union, but they have been working in the field for a long time, so they have this relationship with people that this trust of trust, this relationship of trust, and through them it was very easy to sit down with the members of the hosting community, and I also think that if you sit down with someone with an attitude of interest and listening to them, everyone has a story, and everyone is open to share the story with someone that is really interested in listening to them. And well, what Esther said before about asking this question, in my case was, if you become a refugee tomorrow, what would you miss the most? And that question was also a shock for many members of the hosting communities, because it's someone that they never, maybe someone that never asked himself or herself this question, and they were like, "Wow, what I would miss the most?" That's a difficult question. But then after a while, after talking, they came up with very interesting answers. And the last thing that I realized about asking this question is that the things that we miss the most are things that are not material, that are intangible things, like education or security for your children. And these are things that if you become a refugee, you cannot take with you. These are things that being a refugee, that if you become a refugee, you lose. So that was a very shocking thing that we realized while doing the project.
This approach is very interesting because one of our goals with the EU Trust Fund is to integrate refugees in the country. From your point of view, how is the relation between the hosting communities and the refugees that you had the chance to be in contact with?
So I've been working before documenting the refugee crisis, mostly in Europe. I've been working in Lebanon, in Greece, in Turkey, also in France, even here in Italy, in Ventimiglia, for example. And it was so the refugee camps that I've seen before. There was so people was not free. People was kind of locked inside the camp, and it was, I mean, the feeling of being there and talking with people was very hard. But in northern Uganda was slightly, but was very different, because people there they have their own space of land, and where they can build a house. They have something to start to build a new life there. And I think it was something really different if you compare it with refugee camps that we have here in Europe, because there people is free to move, and they have their own land, then can cultivate the land, and also they have access to education, where, for example, in Greece, in many refugee camps, there are no schools for children, and that was something positive, and I think that's something that helps when melting and being part of the community that welcomes them.
I'll add something very quick to that. So the settlements that we went to, actually most of the settlements in Uganda are set up according to where land is available. So in most cases, these are areas that are far away, without access to education, without access to clean water, without roads. So it's a place that is basically cleared of bush to accommodate people. And when that happens, the local population that has lived there for years, they also get to benefit from the arrival of refugees, because with the new arrivals comes hospitals, roads, water, and so that was, in the beginning, that was like, okay, this is what it comes with. But then, with more and more planning done towards more inclusion of the hosting communities with the refugees, I feel like it's reducing the tensions that were starting to arise with the locals feeling like, oh, the refugees are getting better services than us. But now it is, they share the services. The Ugandan kids can go to the schools where the refugees are going. The refugee students are free to travel and go to school in other areas, you know. So I found that very interesting.
This question particularly for you, as an Ugandan, were you aware of this reality? Did the side-by-side help you being more aware about this, and including the support of the European Union?
So I was aware of the situation. I had been to the settlements a couple of times before, and I guess what the project Side by Side helped me to understand more is the different organizations that the EU is working with and their work on ground, because sometimes you see big names for organizations and you really don't know what they're doing apart from seeing their logos everywhere. But what I really found also interesting is that the EU was funding some organizations that are actually Ugandan, and that was good to know.
And now for you, Guillem, as an European, were you aware that the EU, which is the world's biggest donor for development, would have such an impact in people's lives?
Well, I knew about the situation in Uganda, but I had not the chance of witnessing what was going, and working with Esther in this program in Side by Side was a good chance to go there, witness everything, and speak with refugees and also part of the hosting communities. But one thing that really shocked me was while interviewing the members of the hosting community, they had a very they were very open-minded with the idea of hosting refugees. I remember a sentence that a member of the hosting community told me, that she said, maybe tomorrow we have to go to Sudan or to Congo to flee from a conflict or whatever, and we would expect them to host us and to help us. So they are our brothers and sisters, and now we have to do this for them. We have to host them. We have to help them, and because I'm sure they will do the same for us.
Did you ever felt in a refugee's shoes during this trip? Did the reality that you saw every day make you feel, whoa, amazed by what was going on? Was it a shock to you?
Yeah, but I think there was one girl we interviewed together with Esther that was like really shocking for us. Her story. She was 17 years old. I will explain a little bit, and then I will let Esther explain more about this. And she was 17, in charge of three brothers, younger brothers, and they had to leave Sudan, and she alone with their three younger brothers. And well, we went to visit her at her place, and by that time was not rainy season, but almost rainy season, right? And well, we interviewed her outside of her house, and the house and the roof was broken, so it was full of mud inside the house. And we went outside to interview her, and she shared all her journey from Juba to northern Uganda. And well, being there at that place, listening to her was one of the hardest moments, and while facing the reality of that girl.
I don't know if you have anything to add regarding this story.
So the girl William, her story is it's a very sad and strong story. Also a story that is very much present, especially with the younger women and girls fleeing war, with different experiences of violence and separation from family and loss of family members. And
Sorry for interrupting. Do we have the picture of this girl? Maybe we can show.
yeah, okay, so you can talk about.
No, we can show the picture.
Yeah, but that's not.
It's at the end.
Next. Is this one? Yeah, but sorry, we were just with a technical problem.
Keep going.
Can you keep going? The picture is at the end.
Possiamo scorrere le immagini, è l'ultima immagine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So this is William. She's 17, and as Guillem already told you about her story, she's taking care of her younger siblings, and they live in a very rundown house. Their roof is off, and she has gone through a lot for 17. She has experienced different forms of violence while fleeing war, and when I asked her what the most important item is she carried, she said nothing. Said I didn't carry anything because when war broke out, we just had to run, and they were already living separately from their parents. So when war broke out, they had to run different ways with her younger siblings, and that ends up being her responsibility to raise the children in the camp. What was very strong about her is that despite everything that she's been through, she still manages to welcome people into her home, share her story, and she would rarely smile, but when she smiled, you could really feel it's genuine. Yeah.
It must have been a heartbreaking story to hear. But I guess you had plenty of other that maybe we can show some of the pictures also to give you a glimpse of what the exhibition behind us looks like. Which one would you like to show?
Quale foto vorreste far vedere?
Maybe they could make us everything and then
Yeah, and we can talk.
So I don't know if you...
For example, this one is Fungo Godfrey. He lives in Kiriandongo. And what is really particular about Kiriandongo is that people that lives there is people that that were born in Uganda, but they were displaced in 2006, so 12 years ago, and now they have to live together with the refugees coming from Sudan. And in the case of Fungo, when I asked him if you become a refugee today, what would you miss the most? He said, well, what I would miss is to have a conversation with my best friend in this landscape. And the shock, the really nice thing about him is that his best friend is from Sudan. So this was the first story and the first person I interviewed, and it was like a beautiful way of showing how the hosting communities and the refugees live together. Because in that case, for example, his best friend is from South Sudan. And what we would miss the most is speaking with his best friend that is from South Sudan.
Maybe we can pass to the next photo. We have a few photos and we will just comment on them. In the meantime, I don't know if you have any questions that you would like to address to the photographers.
This is Fungo, the portrait inside his house. As you can see, he's a farmer.
Next photo.
Okay, so my approach was photographing an item and then a portrait of the person and a quote about what that item means to them. So this is Franco, and when I asked him the most important item he carried, he said his education papers. And it's very challenging to be. Yes.
You can finish and then we go to the question.
Okay. It was very interesting to see that you carry your travel documents, but then as welcoming as Uganda is, it's not. It's a country that is still struggling with high rates of unemployment, even for the nationals. So one of the biggest challenges and problems for the refugee community is access to work. So Franco was sharing how this is the most important item that he carried with him, because he knew with his papers he would access work that he is skilled for, but still struggles because he's a refugee and there are not enough opportunities.
Spera appunto che ci possa essere un'opportunità di lavoro.
Qual è stato l'oggetto più curioso, più particolare?
What was the most curious or peculiar item that was mentioned by one of the refugees?
This, the answer is known to this particular time frame. So I had already started on this project before, where I went to the settlements and interviewed people and photographed before I got onto this program with the EU. But the most interesting item for me was a man, he's 70 years old. He carried photographs of his wife on a trip that she had done to India. So his wife was the first person in the family to go overseas from South Sudan. And it was a very important moment that deserved to be preserved for him. So of all the things that he carried, the photographs were the most important to him, and I didn't expect that.
Any other questions?
Ci sono altre domande?
Maybe we can pass to the next photo.
Allora magari possiamo passare alla prossima foto.
This was, for example, is
questa.
Daniel.
Questo è Daniel.
Daniel is
Daniel
a member of the hosting community also in Kiriandongo.
comunità appunto
And
Kiriandongo.
When I was interviewing him,
Quando stanno parlando con l'intervista,
he told me that the thing that he would miss the most would be security and stability for his daughter.
la sicurezza per sua figlia.
And it was, being a photographer, it was also very challenging to photograph things that are concepts, that are feelings, that are not material. So when I was coming out of his house in Kiriandongo, I was thinking, well, how am I going to photograph security or stability? And then I found outside of the house, I found this painting, and I found her daughter playing around the house. And Daniel told me that he drew his own hand in the wall of his house, and then his daughter was playing, trying to match her own hand with the hand of his father. And then I said, well, the picture of this concept of security and stability for my daughter is just here with this action that is happening in front of me.
Questa azione che si stava verificando di fronte a me, questa bambina che giocava.
Maybe we can go to the next.
Possiamo passare alla prossima?
This was also when I interviewed another member of the hosting community. She told me that a thing that she would miss a lot would be access to education. And then I was thinking, how am I going to photograph this? But well, then we drive through a school, so I went in and I spoke with the director of the school, and he told me, yes, we have many students here coming from Congo, coming from South Sudan, and they attend to class together with the people, with Ugandans. And then he showed me the installations of the school, and there was this room with that student studying for the exam that they had that afternoon. And I thought that was a very nice image to show this concept of access to education.
Più adatta a illustrare il concetto di mancanza di istruzione o di accesso appunto all'istruzione.
Ciao, una domanda.
I have a question. When you are in front of a picture, do you simply take the picture, or do you have a more reflexive approach to the photography? I mean, are you instinctive when you take a picture? You see the situation and you simply take a picture, or do you reason? Do you look for a concept? Are you more reflexive? You tend to wait for the best moment.
I think is a mix of these two ways of approach a concept. Because in the case, for example, of Daniel, when I saw his daughter playing with the hand that he put in outside of the house, I had the situation in front of me. But for example, in the case of education, or also in the exhibition, there is a case of someone who said, "I would miss freedom." I remember that freedom, for example, was the last concept that I did not have a picture of. And we were coming back with Esther from the north, and I did not have a picture of freedom. You remember that? And we were driving on the road, and suddenly I saw a bird flying, and I said, well, this is an image that can show, that can express this concept of freedom. And then this bird flew over a tree, so I managed to take the picture when the bird was flying over the tree. So I took that picture from the car, for example, and I took that picture. Then I looked there and I told her, I think I have the last picture, so we can come back to Kampala, to the capital. So, but yes, there were some concepts. For example, there is another member of the hosting community that said harmony. So, how are you going to photograph harmony? So, while in the time that we were there working, I was with my eyes open to see what situations were expressing these concepts that people were telling to me. This is the one showing the concept of harmony.
We can move to the next. And I guess last.
That's already. We need to go to the next one.
Next.
Quella dopo, la prossima. State tornando indietro, credo.
This one?
No, questa?
This one?
Yeah. This one? Go back. Go back.
La successiva, quella che
Back.
devo vedere prima. Dovreste tornare indietro.
It's okay. Maybe no, it was the young girl.
La bambina.
This
The
one.
one.
Yes.
Yeah, so her name is Asante. She's 5 years old.
Ha 5 anni.
And when I asked her what the most important item is that she carried, and she said, my dress, my kitenge dress, which is the African fabric. And I asked her why, and she says, because it is nice. You know, so for me, the ability for small items to mean so much to someone at different levels and different engagements in life is very important. I was really interested in seeing what items that are tangible that people carry with them and end up finding them to be very much important. So someone carried food and they said it's the most important item because I have young children to feed. And then someone will carry a carpet and they will explain the importance of the carpet. They'll be like, we had to escape, it was rainy season, this carpet had to be our shelter along the way. So it's small things like that we usually pay less attention to in our daily lives that actually in times of need end up supporting our lives and meaning so much to us than we can ever imagine.
In our last question, what was the biggest take from this experience?
L'aspetto più importante, diciamo, di questa esperienza che avete vissuto?
So for me, the biggest take,
La cosa più importante che avete imparato.
actually, the reason why I was really interested in taking this approach is because we are living in fast times. We are living in times of chasing the next big thing. What is the next cool camera on the market? What's the next? Where should I travel next to? And these are usually good things that satisfy us in the moment. But also, these are things that we look at and feel like we can differentiate ourselves. We are of a certain status than other people. But if these things are taken away, if you don't have any of that, in the end, you're just a human as the other person who's a refugee. So for me, exploring this was more of a personal search, and through the items that people managed to carry with them, like the guy who carried the education papers, he told me his story, and he ran a successful money transfer business, like very successful, but right now he has nothing. He has his documents, but he can't do anything because he doesn't have the money to start another business. He doesn't have the opportunity to get a job, and yet he had it all. So everything can disappear, and in the end, who are we? We're just who we're actually, who we are as a person, rather than the items that we have with us. Yeah.
You, Guillem?
Well, I think that the best thing of being part of this project was the chance of having the chance of listening to these people. I think that our camera is the best passport to the lives of amazing people, and these people, for me, it's really like amazing in the way they live their lives and in the way they welcome, for example, in my case, the refugees. And well, it was, I think I learned a lot being there, listening to them, and I learned that as this part of the Austrian community said to me, that we are all the same. We are, despite we live in different countries, we are all human, and we have to help each other, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and this thing can happen to us in Europe as well, or in Spain, or whatever. And I think that we have to be welcoming with people that is fleeing from war and from natural disasters, for example. Because maybe tomorrow we are going to need their help.
Thank you very much to you and to you for being here tonight. If you don't have questions, we finish here our session. Any questions? Okay, good. Before we finish, I would like to invite you to visit this fantastic photo exhibition and read these inspiring stories and meet these people who are being helped by us, all of us. Thanks again and enjoy your evening.
Grazie e vi auguro una buona serata.